All right. Well, welcome everybody to HITEC Live. Bienvenidos. Welcome back after a little short summer hiatus. I know we were doing this for about 2 years now since the start of COVID. But then summer came along and everyone decided to go on vacation. So we wanted to make sure folks had a chance to really enjoy their summers, but we're really excited to be coming back. So if you're new to HITEC, welcome. I'm Viviana Costa, I'm the Executive Director of HITEC. And as always, we are just so excited to bring this community together. If this is your first HITEC Live, this is a bi-monthly series where we bring together our Hispanic technology community to connect, share, and maybe learn something new. And for those of you that have been coming to our previous sessions, we've shifted our schedule a bit to the middle of the week now, to Wednesdays. So now these sessions are going to be taking place every other Wednesday, twice a month. So our sessions are informal conversations where we get to hear from our partners and our community members on topics that touch on tech, leadership, D&I, and a little bit of everything in between. A few housekeeping points before we jump in. Go ahead if you haven't already, if you want to rename yourself with your name and your company name, just so kind of folks get to know who you are. So as you see, mine says Viviana Costa with HITEC. Keep your cameras on if possible, but if you are not speaking, please keep yourselves on mute. That way we're not hearing background information. And then also as the conversation gets going, get your questions ready, put them in the chat because we're going to be doing a quick Q&A at the end of our session, and we're going to circle back for some questions and answers with our panelists. So today we're going to be talking about belonging, and this discussion is being led by our friends at Pyramid Consulting, and we're going to be joined by leadership from Twitter and AT&T, and they'll be introducing themselves in a bit. But today, we're talking about belonging, and when people feel like they belong, they are 167% more likely to engage and recommend their organizations to others. How powerful is that? That's incredibly powerful. So we're going to be talking about that. So to kick us off and share what belonging means at Pyramid Consulting, I'd like to welcome Namita Tirath, longtime HITEC supporter and champion, Executive Vice President and co-founder and Chief Customer Service Officer at Pyramid Consulting. Namita, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Viviana. Thank you. As mentioned by Viviana, hola, first of all, I am the co-founder and Chief Customer Officer for Pyramid Consulting, and we have a very deep commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And Pyramid Consulting, as Viviana mentioned, has had a very long and meaningful and mutually beneficial relationship with HITEC for over a decade. I don't believe I've ever missed an event that HITEC has put together. Viviana, you can probably attest to that. I have gotten to everywhere, wherever you all have the HITEC gathering. So
you have.
Yes, it's been lovely. And by the end of that event, I almost feel like I'm a Latina because I belong to one of those countries that you all tally up. So it's been a great learning experience, but also a great place to actually have a community engagement as well. Well, Pyramid Consulting is an intentionally inclusive company committed to ensuring all people are provided with equal opportunity so that organizations and people can realize their full potential. And this is not a talk, we actually do this. We help our customers in their DEI journey through several of the AI-fueled programs that can help them be more inclusive and equitable in their hiring processes. And so this relationship with HITEC has helped us in talent attraction, sourcing, retention, and community engagement. So coming to the topic of belonging, right? How important it is. We all recognize that attraction of talent is one challenge, but retention of the talent is a whole different ballgame. So as a corporate initiative under the Intentionally Inclusive umbrella, we were the first of the companies to have launched an ERG, Employee Resource Group, for within the staffing industry for not only our employees, but also our transient population, our consultants. We have over 7 ERGs that we have created and we are launching. As you see in my background, we are launching the Latin Tech, reaching out to the Latinx community for this ERG. So thank you so very much for making it meaningful for us to begin this with this launch. And let me introduce you to one of the one of the people in crime with me, Crystal, who she and I are heading this particular ERG. She's one of the stars at Pyramid Consulting. Crystal, over to you.
Thank you, Namita. Hi, everyone. I'm Crystal Sanchez, and in case it wasn't clear by my Zoom background, my polo shirt, tagging my company name per Viviana's request, I'm with Pyramid Consulting, and I'm the co-chair of the Latin Tech ERG. The mission of Latin Tech is to cultivate an inclusive environment that supports and encourages Hispanic and Latinx employees and consultants to advance their skills and leadership potential through connection, mentorship, collaboration, and discussion. Our vision is to provide professional development programs for members, align and engage with our customers, and give back to the communities where we work. That said, I have a small confession to make. I'm not of Hispanic descent personally. I married an Hispanic man and inherited my surname. So when I was asked to co-chair the Latin Tech ERG here at Pyramid, I had a little bit of imposter syndrome. But LaShaun Solomon, our head of DEI at Pyramid, spoke these words to me that I'll never forget. She said, "You don't have to be to belong." And since then, I've experienced such a warm and welcoming reception from the Latin Tech community and learned so much from you about Latin traditions and cultures that I can share with my husband and our two boys and help them understand their roots and where they came from and celebrate traditions from their and their dad's Hispanic heritage. So I'm very thankful for this amazing community and the opportunity to moderate today's session with two esteemed panelists whose reputations precede them. Joining us today are James LaDuca, VP of IDEA, Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility at Twitter, and Lynette Aguilar, Vice President and General Manager of North Texas at AT&T. James, Lynette, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited to dig in with you. I'd love it if you could start with a brief introduction of yourselves, and then let's dive right in. James, if you want to start, can you tell us more about your career journey and how DE&I has played a role?
Sure. Thank you, Crystal. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm James. I use he, him, él, and for visual description purposes, I am a Mexican man with brown hair, brown eyes, glasses, and a black striped shirt in front of a blue background that's blurred. Real quickly, for those of you who may have never experienced someone sharing their pronouns or their visual descriptors before they start to speak as a presenter, we standardize that here at Twitter. And the reason why is it's a very simple and straightforward, but powerful way to practice allyship and belonging with folks who need it. And we'll talk more a little bit about that, or I'm happy to take questions about our approach to that. It is such a pleasure to be here with all of you. I am such a huge fan of HITEC. I'm such a huge fan of this community. I am so excited that we are on the eve of Latinx Heritage Month, which we celebrate all around the world at Twitter. And I'm just honored to be here with all of you. As you heard, I am head of a team at Twitter that's called IDEA. It stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility. And if you would have told little baby me who grew up in the San Joaquin Valley of California that someday I would be here, te lo juro, no lo creo. But here's the journey. Born and raised in a part of California that's known for two things and two things alone: immigrants and agriculture. I was raised on the mi abuela because my dad was in the fields. And my mom had this crazy idea that she would go to college and have a career, which for a Mexican woman back then, it's a very unpopular decision. But it was also a very unpopular time to be Mexican in that part of the state. And so because of my late skin, I learned to hide really important parts of who I was at a very early age. And for better or for worse, that skill would come in really handy when I hit high school, because I would start to come to terms with my sexuality. And the only thing a closeted queer kid in the San Joaquin Valley of California knew about gay people back then was what I saw on the TV news.
Mhm.
And it was the height of the AIDS epidemic. And the TV news was telling me that gay people were monsters. And I thought, well, I don't want to be that. So I hid a little bit deeper into myself. And it wasn't until I first stepped foot on the Berkeley campus that for the very first time in my life, 18 years on, I saw an example of someone showing up as their full, authentic self. And, you know, to be honest, before that moment, I didn't even know that was an option for me. And in that moment, it did two things for me. It gave me permission and it gave me power. And I share that for two reasons. One, in this moment, I want to give every single person who can hear my voice the permission and power to bring your full, authentic self to the workplace. I guarantee you, you were not hired to go to your organization to look like everyone else and think like everyone else and fit in. You were hired because of your differences. Your differences are your superpowers. And whatever company you work for, whoever your manager is, they need you to tap into those superpowers to help make your culture and your organization even better. Never forget that. And then, of course, with the benefit of retrospect, I can now appreciate that I've been cultivating permission and power in other people my entire career. And it's a two-part process, cultivating permission and power in people, but also working to reimagine the systems that ever required this to be necessary to begin with, because you can't have one without the other. And I have had the great fortune to do it in the life sciences sector, in the nonprofit sector, even spent some time consulting for the White House back in the good old days when we really loved the White House. And now I am in tech. Again, it's been a long, twisty journey, like so many of our journeys. But every day I come to work proud and inspired to do this work at a place where I can be my full authentic self and have such an impact on the world. So that's me. Crystal, back over to you.
That's an amazing journey, James. You legit gave me goosebumps with that story. And I know you're one of the few LGBTQ plus and Latinx executives in the field and have dedicated your life's work to addressing systemic inequity, uplifting underrepresented people and communities, and igniting change in the tech sector. So thank you for that and for sharing your story with us. Lynette, how about you? Can you tell us a bit about how you got here and how DEI has played a role in your personal and professional journeys?
Yeah, absolutely, Crystal. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good everything to everyone. Like James, I'm so honored to be here with all of you. So thank you for taking your time to join us and belonging to this conversation. So I am today a Vice President and General Manager at AT&T, serving the North Texas market. So those of you who know Texas, I know we think we're our own country, but pretty large, from El Paso to Waco, Dallas, Lubbock, Amarillo, the whole shebang, kind of north of Waco. But I grew up in small town Texas. I'm from Victoria, more on the coast, second generation Mexican American. My parents, were both first in their families to go to college. And so I learned from their example the value of education, and also the challenges in breaking barriers, right? And kind of being the first. My dad specifically was the first in so many areas. And then I've had the opportunity to continue his legacy and break barriers of my own because of not only my dad, but so many other people, right, that came before us as Latinos or as people of color, and for me, certainly as women. So when I stumbled on AT&T, let me go back. So Victoria, James, I like the way you kind of framed up where you grew up. Victoria is known for the land of millionaires and roses, right? And so growing up there, not wealthy and non-white, was a significant challenge. And so for us, and like James being light-skinned, I didn't grow up speaking the language, right? Because my parents wanted to help me fit in. Given all of I didn't belong in that community. So it was a challenge, but set the stage also for doing more. And so when I landed at AT&T, I started in a call center, right? Kind of grungy. I'm not sure how I really ended up here, other than, found AT&T at a Nishimba job fair, and this is where I landed. I thought I'd be here for a couple of years, and I fell in love with the company because of the people and the values that are here. I've had an opportunity to have, I've been here 16 years. I'm on job number 14 because I've worked with incredible leaders who saw something in me that I didn't, and they worked to build my confidence and pull it out of me. So I'm so grateful for that, especially in a company that skews white male, like most tech companies. And what I would tell you is, along the way, I had an opportunity to leave Texas and go work in Mexico City. And what I learned was, working in Mexico, I was, super gringa. And, when I'm in Texas, I'm super Mexican. And neither one of those describes who I am. So I've had to really work on this journey of who am I? When we talk about being our authentic selves, I love the dialogue, but what the heck does that really mean? And so it's been a journey of challenging myself and reflection to make sure I can show up and create really safe spaces for those around me and my team. And that's really why I'm here with HITEC, right? The mission of push up, pull up really resonated with me. Again, I'm here because people really pushed me. I never would have thought, okay, I'm going to do a call center to running a $4 billion market, at this point in I never think it was possible. So I'm so grateful to be pushed in this direction and to have people challenge me, but certainly see the opportunity and the obligation to pull others with us, because, man, we got a long way to go. So Crystal, back to you.
We sure do. Thanks, Lynette, for sharing your story, and congratulations, by the way, on being recognized by HITEC as one of the 100 most influential Hispanic executives in technology recently. I know that you're so passionate about increasing Hispanic representation in the workforce, and that achieving equity from the classroom to the boardroom is close to your heart.
Yes, thank you so very much. It's an honor.
Today's discussion is Nosotros, Pertenecemos, or we belong. Belonging is such a broad term, though. James, I was wondering if you could tell us how you define belonging, and how has Twitter established a sense of belonging for its employees?
That's a fantastic question. The terms come up a lot lately at work. And, as seasons change and kids around the world go back to school, my husband and I have 2 little ones. God bless all you parents out there who are juggling family, back to school, and work. I've been thinking of belonging a lot and what it means. And what I realize is there's no singular definition of belonging. People experience belonging and define it on a very personal level. And so what I will tell you about belonging is true for me and true for how we build a framework at Twitter. But I also want to encourage you to think a lot about what belonging means to you and what you need to experience belonging, because it's going to be different. At Twitter, we think about it in practice. Belonging is about creating a workplace where tweeps, that's what we call ourselves. Sounds cheesy at first, you get used to it. There's an obnoxious amount of bird puns at Twitter. where tweeps across the company feel seen, valued, and empowered to do their best work. I think about the work that we do in inclusion. And usually when we talk about belonging and inclusion, I present to all new hires. It's actually one of my favorite thing to do at this company, because when you talk to people who are brand new to a company, they come in, I mean, think about when you start a new company, most people come in really excited, like peak happiness about starting a new job, peak happiness about the brand, peak happiness about the workplace, and best case scenario, that continues for their entire career. But as we all know, there can be peaks and valleys. So talking to new hires just feeds me energy. I talk to them about how we think about diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, Twitter. We do an exercise that is called the power of inclusion and belonging. And the exercise, and I want to encourage you to take this back. I'm giving full permission for everyone to rip this off, borrow, and use it in your companies or in your organizations. It's called the power of inclusion and belonging. And what we do is we encourage everyone to think about a time in their life when they were excluded from something. And then I tell a little story to stall to give everyone time to think of their own example. And then folks break into little groups, breakout groups, 5 minutes, everyone share your story, come back and debrief. Then when we're debriefing, I ask 2 people to share their stories. The number of stories, I'm, by the way, 127 years old. I'm way older than I look. I've been doing this, this exercise for like 15 years. I've done it in schools, universities. I did it once at the White House. I've done it in companies. And one of the things I share is in all this work and hearing years and years and years, probably hundreds of stories. I have come to personally believe that there are 4 truths to inclusion and belonging. First is, 1, I have yet to meet a human being who doesn't know what it's like to feel excluded from something. There's a very common misperception that diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging work is for some people or some communities, and that is foundationally false. It is for everyone. Truth number 2, that universal human experience that we've just described, that we've acknowledged every single human has had, it's one of pain and trauma. And the reason why I know that is because every single human can recall an incident like that. You carry around that pain and trauma with you. It doesn't take much to recall it, even childhood things. Truth number 3, inclusion, sure, can be fostered in programs by companies and investments and consultants. Those help. But it almost always happens more memorably in quiet moments between 2 people. And then truth number 4 is when we do not consciously act to include people, we are almost inevitably excluding someone. And the reason why is, in all my time doing this work, the vast majority of stories that I've heard of exclusion are not from malintended people who set out to exclude people, which is not to say those people don't exist. Of course they exist, but we know who they are, and they represent a very teeny fraction of humanity's experience of exclusion. Most people experience exclusion because someone just didn't stop and think. Someone didn't stop and think, have I invited everyone to this meeting? I'm workplace context, of course. Have I invited everyone to this meeting that should be at this meeting? Have I scheduled it at a time that works for people who have all different personal experiences, caregiving responsibilities? If there is a note taker at the meeting that I have called, are we rotating responsibilities for note taking, or is it always, like, let's be clear, the most junior woman in the room? These are things that we have to practice every single day. I've been doing this work a long time. I still have to practice this work and be conscious about it every single day. And it's okay to make mistakes. That means you're learning, and that means you're growing. But if we don't practice a mindset of cultivating inclusion and belonging every single day and make that core to who we are as people, we can't truly achieve an inclusive workplace that's based in belonging. Gosh, that was a really long answer. I'm so sorry.
What a great answer, James. And once again, over here with goosebumps. And I love that exercise of defining belonging by remembering a time when you were excluded, when you didn't belong. And your fourth point particularly was very eye-opening for me, in that if you don't intentionally include someone, then you're perhaps inadvertently, but all the same, excluding someone, in fact. So, it's a responsibility that we have to be conscious and intentional about every day. You also said that everyone will define belonging differently. So, for me, and you touched on this earlier, James, belonging is when I can truly bring my authentic self to work. When I feel like I don't belong, my performance suffers, whereas conversely, an increased sense of belonging leads to better collaboration, problem solving, decision making. A sense of belonging, I think, at work is really the key to unlocking someone's full potential. Lynette, what do you think? How do you define belonging, and what has AT&T done to establish a sense of belonging for its employees?
Yeah, Crystal, thank you so much. And James, I agree. Just lots of takeaways, and I love the power of that exercise. At AT&T, we start with a common set of values that we haven't always had. So those are fairly new to us. And a couple of them that stand out is living true, right? Live true, which really begins with your character and how we treat one another. Another one is stand for equality, speaking with your actions. And then being there when your customers and your colleagues need you the most. So I think establishing that really put pen to paper around the types of employees that we've always hired and that enjoy working here. And our CEO at the time personally wrote them, right? It wasn't anybody external, it wasn't the PR team, it wasn't HR, it was the CEO setting the stage for here are the values. And I start with that because then our leadership team can carry that forward, right? And it's in those real conversations of, creating a safe space to share your personal stories, right? Have intentional time for those, right? We have a real talks development program where that's 100% what it is, right? It's personal storytelling, respectful, vulnerable, but here's who I am, and I'm so proud to be here and know all of you. And I think when it's done in a place of safety, that makes sense. And then there's a focus on not diversity in terms of all of the demographics, but diversity of perspective. So I don't know a single person of color or a woman who hasn't at one point or another felt like they were a token or they were checking the box for an organization. And I always felt like if I were in an organization because I was a Hispanic female, then put my 2 babies on the payroll, because check, right? And so it really comes down to, well, yes, and. So yes, I'm Hispanic, yes, I'm female, and what are the other things that have shaped my perspective to make me unique? And we think about, job scope, responsibility, function, geography, exposure to different cultures. I think all of those things come together to form a diversity of perspective, which is bigger than your gender, it's bigger than your ethnicity, and all of the other amazing components we typically think about. So we're trying to expand the definition, right? You want to build a diverse team, but a diverse team that wins, right? And so a diverse team that wins has all these experiences to draw from, So not only do you not look alike, but you have just a different mental perspective to bring to the table. And that's been really valuable in creating a sense of belonging. And I would also say it's about taking that personal responsibility, taking our culture and being really transparent. So one of the things we've done only in the past 2 years has been, hey, it's important that we have a diverse workforce. It's important that we're transparent about what that looks like and are we successful or are we not. And so it's hard to put pen to paper on all of those other things that I was talking about that lead to diversity of perspective. So we've been real transparent and where are we hiring and what does our workforce look like at all levels? Gender, right, ethnicity, LGBTQ, and how are people moving, how are people coming into the organization? How are they moving through and progressing, and where are they not? So there's been a focus on, yes, development programs are so good and the ERGs, but to navigate through most companies, you need sponsorship, you need advocacy, and that's where I think belonging really matters, right? Is we're intentional about building a diverse workforce that mirrors our communities. The communities that we operate in, I mean, we're a global company, are incredibly diverse. And there's also an opportunity for us to pull our employees together, right? So we're 250,000 employees strong around the world. And part of that is creating a safe space and also showing up for people as different communities have challenges. So certainly ours is Latinos, but all of our segments are attacked at some point. And ensuring that we're there to support our employees goes a really long way. Even just acknowledging that something happened in a community, I think goes a long way, I think, to James's point about trauma, right? Powerful. And I would also say we're not perfect, right? So a long way to go as a company and a long way to go as individuals, but I'm proud of the steps that we continue to take and how we challenge ourselves to continue to do better. Crystal, back to you.
Thanks, Lynette. I really loved what you said about yes and. I'm not just here because I'm a female. I'm not just here because I'm Pan-Asian with a Hispanic last name. I'm proud of those things, but I have more to give. And I know that everybody else here has too. By the way, for those with burning questions for Lynette and James, please do pop them into the chat and we can get right to them in our Q&A at the bottom of the call. I have a suspicion, though, that there will be some people here who are hoping to get some guidance on how to start a DE&I initiative at their company or even on a smaller scale, right? On their team, in their ecosystem. What advice do you have for someone on how to get started? Lynette, you want to go first this time? Mix it up?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think one is just good intent, right? Come with good intent and respect is always the way to start these conversations. And then there's no right way and we're going to stumble, but if you have that good intent and you're open and honest, it will all be fine. So I think there's everything from starting at the top and creating an entire structure, which I think James can speak to more than I can. But as a leader within your own team, there's so many great grassroots things that you can do that are powerful because they're driven by your team, right? It's things that are of interest. It's everything from, in my organization, we just started a group pulled together by employees that wanted to make a difference. They had a passion and we were looking to develop them, right? So what a great opportunity for them to take a leadership stance in the organization. And they cultivated the things by listening to their teams and their peers that they thought would make a difference. So it's everything from engaging in the community and supporting things. And, at AT&T, one of the things we're passionate about is closing the digital divide, which we all know disproportionately impacts the Black and Brown community. So leaning in there because there's that professional tie-in to, hey, let's have some real dialogue, right? So one of the things we do is a real simple, I am, but I am not. And we create a conversation and let people fill in the blanks of what that could mean. And it becomes real powerful. Everything from, I am somebody might say or has said in one of my groups, I'm a woman, but I'm not a mother. And we kicked off a phenomenal conversation about infertility. And so people, I'm Latino, but I don't speak Spanish. So whatever it is, it's a really powerful way to break down barriers and a framework to share, even if your story is hard to share, or even if vulnerability in a group setting is really uncomfortable for you. But we found giving some constructs to things has helped create that safe space. And some ground rules, I think, help too, right? Show up to engage, show up with curiosity and respect, right? Come to listen and, learn. So I think creating some really safe ground rules for those grassroots efforts goes a long way. The caution I would have is to ensure, I think to James's point, you're intentional about all the groups, right? So if you're going to start, make sure you have a calendar, make sure you're intentional about what things you're talking about, what are the groups that you're hitting, because there's so much risk for leaving someone out that I think it's important to spend time on the strategy and the planning from a year-long perspective.
Intent is so important, Lynette, and being intentionally inclusive, really is the key. That's one of the things that I admire most about Pyramid, in fact, is that we don't just talk about it, but we are an intentionally inclusive company. It's in our DNA, as I hear Namita say all the time, and really is the foundation of programs here at Pyramid, like GenSpark. So James, how about you? What advice would you have for someone looking to get started with the DE&I initiative at their company?
Lynette, that was great advice. And in fact, my response, we're gonna have some similar themes. But before I give you my response, Crystal, I'm gonna rat you out. This is Crystal's first time moderating a panel, and she was very nervous. And I just want to say, you are crushing it. You are crushing it. I am grateful for you. And man, if I was this good at things the first time I did them, imagine where I might, whoa. Anyway, thank you for role modeling what it looks like to lead courageously.
James, I told you she's a star. I already told you. Yes, yes.
Right.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Sorry, thank you for indulging me, everyone. 3 things come to mind. This work is about we, not me. The very first thing that will get you into trouble is centering yourself in this work, which is very tempting to do, because we all have lived experience and journeys that are struggle stories. And so wanting to center your own struggle story in initiating the work is very, very tempting, but you are going to be infinitely more effective if you make it about we and don't center yourself, which is not to say that when you engage in the work that you shouldn't bring your full authentic self. That's modeling. That's giving people power to do the same, but don't center yourself in the work. Make sure you're being intentional and inclusive, not just to Lynette's point, not just of Latinos, but of all underrepresented people. There are power in numbers. If people see you authentically, not doing it just for you or your group, but to create a sense of belonging for all groups that benefit from it, you will immediately be busting down doors in ways that you could never imagine. I forgot what my second point was. There were 3 because people like things in 3. Oh, cultivate allies. Cultivate allies. If you just work among the underrepresented communities, depending on your organization, that might be like 3 people. You're not going to get far just working with 3 people. Cultivate allies. I guarantee you there are people who do not come from underrepresented folks who are very eager to lean in, but are just too scared to do it because they're afraid that they're going to get something wrong. If you invite those allies in to be part of your movement, you will accelerate the process of change. And then last but not least, start. Just start. There's no good time to start. There's no bad time to start. If you do the work, you do it authentically with intentionality, benefiting everyone, and you put some hustle in it, no one's going to tell you no. Like if you just start to organize groups, oh, it's Latinx Heritage Month, I'm gonna pull together a cafecito and invite allies and have a little party and everyone's gonna volunteer their time. No one's gonna be mad at that. And if they are mad at that, then they've got some work to do. There's no bad time to start, and no one's gonna tell you to stop once you get going.
Just start.
Just start.
So simple, right?
That should actually be all 3 points. Start,
Yeah.
and start.
I mean, I don't know if you guys can see this, but I have this on my desk: progress, not perfection, right? Don't get yourself into a paralysis by analysis situation. Just start and learn by making mistakes. Getting started is important, but also, so is moving forward, right? For those who may already have a DE&I initiative in place at their company, but maybe it's got some dust on it from being static, or what suggestions would you have for how companies or even individual leaders on this call can get dynamic and further an inclusive workplace? Lynette? Sorry, I got to call someone.
I think it's always inspecting and challenging yourself, right? Like, so many of our companies that are established have, ERGs, employee resource groups. Are they supported? Are they effective in their mission? And from a company headquarters perspective, is there an opportunity to lean in and say, we can and should do more, and we can and should do better, right? Best practice sharing amongst organizations. I had a conversation this week with our Chief Diversity Officer on, again, can and should do better, can and should do more, and I think that never changes. So what are the ways we can do that? And what are other companies doing that we should steal from and share our own best practices? Because you're right, it's never done. Some of the stuff does get dusty, and it can start feeling like we're just checking the box. And that's when it's time for a shakeup, right? And acknowledging that life happens to everybody, right? The good, the bad, the ugly. And sometimes people, because of life, maybe need to step back a little bit and let somebody else take the baton for a minute that does have the passion and the fresh energy to drive those really good conversations and break the barriers and create bridges. Because it's exhausting work, because often it's not always a celebration, but there's a struggle in trying to open people's eyes and bring them along for the journey. So that's really what I would say, is challenge yourself to freshen things up, seek best practices, and maybe move some people around and give others the opportunity when needed. That's not always the answer, but sometimes fresh perspective is really healthy.
Yeah, I liked what you said about shaking it up and maybe even passing the baton to someone else, right? Maybe one of the allies that you've cultivated, like James said earlier. Thank you so much for sharing your journeys with us. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I personally have takeaways and actionable things that I want to do for the Latin Tech ERG here at Pyramid. We wanted to leave time for some Q&A, and speaking of passing the baton, Viviana, I think you were going to go ahead and moderate those questions. So I'll go ahead and hand it off to you.
Amazing. Well, first of all, panel, amazing job. I wish we had more time for more. But we'll definitely get into some questions. I have three so far that have been put into the chat. So I'll start from the top. Melissa Sensi-Esteban is asking, what are the top 1 or 2 hurdles that you see trending that we face as a community in the workplace, and any takeaways on how to tackle those hurdles?
I'll jump in, Viviana, if you're okay with that, and James, if you don't mind. There's a lot of challenges, right? I think 2 of them I'll call, or let's just see. There's so much richness in our collective culture that that sometimes stand in our way. So for example, things like respect for authority sometimes translates to sitting in the meeting room if you are more junior than others or feel more junior or have that perspective, true or not, and you're going to keep your mouth shut and defer to those that you believe are the authoritative in the room. So the lack, struggling to find your voice, I think can come out a lot in our culture. I've certainly experienced it and had to work through it because there are times, my mama would have smacked me for speaking up in some of these rooms, right? Similar, I think, is the humility, right? The beautiful part of our culture, but then we don't do our own PR and tell our stories. And that's gorgeous, but it holds us back in corporate settings when other people are telling their own story and advocating for themselves. And so one of the challenges, I'll give this example, and Viviana, you and I spoke about this at HITEC, because of those things, right? And I have a workforce, part of my workforce, think about retail store reps that are very talented, might look like us, and we're raised with the same belief of do a darn good job at the job you have and good things will happen, right? Keep your head down and do a good job, and somebody will come tap you on the shoulder for the next thing. And I had 3, entry-level manager positions in my organization. They were bilingual, and I had 0 candidates. So I went out and looked at my organization, and qualified for that promotional opportunity were 150 people. And so I had to pull them onto a call and say, guys, what is going on here? I get that you're waiting to be tapped, but I do not believe that all 150 of you are not ready, right? Are not ambitious enough, are not interested. If you need a tap on the shoulder, here it is. Apply for these jobs, but 1 of you, 3 of you guys are going to get it. But it was a real struggle because those are the cultural things we have. And again, they're gorgeous. And it's why I love our culture. But I think we have to use those and figure out how to navigate them in a way that still feels good, but also sets us up for success.
Lynette, I'm going to huge +1 that. As someone who speaks from an intersectional perspective, who's both queer and Latino, I can speaking for both identities. And I think a lot of people feel this who come from a community. The things that I love most about being from these communities are also some of the things that infuriate me the most about being from these communities, and both can be true. And so I think that's at its core the thing that Lynette, the point that Lynette's trying to make is that these beautiful characteristics of who we are can also get in our way if we're not mindful about them and understand how they show up in different environments and seeing whether or not them showing up in certain environments continue to serve us. Being very family oriented serves me when I'm in my family system. Being very loyal serves me in certain environments. There might be a time in your life where being very loyal to your employer no longer serves you because it's not working out for you. But what we see, even in a global macroeconomic environment like this, attrition rates for example, Black community is much higher than for the Latino community. And my hypothesis is twofold. One of the only good things to come out of 2020, speaking in broad general terms, is the many, many, many commitments that companies made to be better and show up more for our Black community. And as a result, there has been an increase in opportunities for Black workers who are taking advantage of these commitments and exercising more talent mobility. So 1, there's more opportunity for the Black community. And then 2, we as a people, because of our cultural background, are more likely to stay at a job that's not working for us. It's just fact. It's demonstrated in research and you can see it in trends. So just be mindful of, yes, celebrate who you are and how you are and where you come from. Just make sure that it's serving you in the system and the environment that you're walking about, because it is not universally true. I forgot my second point again. See, I get so excited about stuff. Yeah, back to you. Oh, I know what it was. We need more of this. We need more HITEC. We need more participation in this. We need more of everything. If you look historically, again, the last thing I'm suggesting is like the oppressionalist Olympics. There is more of more for everyone is better. But if you compare, for example, historically, the effort to develop and mature the job market for US, African Americans, and Blacks is more mature than it is for us. If you look at the job market, there are HBCUs available. There are, for every HITEC, there's an Afrotech, there's a Dev Color, there's many, many more professional institutions and organizations, because the community has been investing for longer in creating opportunity. We are further behind. There are many, many reasons that have contributed to that, but let's stop being behind. We need to be involved more, to advocate more, create more opportunity for our communities. Sure, we don't have HBCUs. We have community colleges. Once companies wake up to the fact that one of the greatest HSI networks in the United States are community colleges, man, look at the progress we can make. So we all need to do more with organizations like HITEC, but then also raise the consciousness of our employers that opportunities are out there for our community and the talent is there. We just need to know where to look.
Awesome, James. I appreciate that. I'm gonna, this next question I think is gonna be like another layer to what you just said. And the question is, it came from Christopher Rivera. And this is to both Lynette and James. How does AT&T and Twitter make sure practice inclusion and belonging when hiring? A lot of Latinx folks simply don't have the means to be as competitive as others, like getting a good university education. So how are these folks included? Thoughts on that?
Lynette, you want
yeah,
to first go, me too?
Sure. I'm like, who's going? And yeah, I'll take a. And actually, I did the last one first. Why don't you do this one?
Sure. So we try to solve this at the systems level. There are, first of all, we did an equity audit of our entire talent acquisition lifecycle. It's a really fancy corporate way of making sure, saying that we make sure that we look at all the different stages in interviewing that we know universally bias exists in, and do a bias check to make sure that we try to mitigate and minimize it wherever possible. Then we implemented something, and we actually wrote a blog about it. So if you Google Twitter principles of inclusive hiring, we have an inclusive hiring training that if you're a hiring manager and you want to open a job rec, before you can have that job rec opened, you have to show that you have completed the principles of inclusive hiring first, so you understand what it means to hire inclusively. There are 4 principles. I'm going to try to list them, but I know I'm going to forget one. Principle number 1, always hire the most qualified candidate, full stop. I'm not going to try to list them because I'm not going to remember them all, and then I'm going to feel silly. Google principles of inclusive hiring. It's all there. Also, we do a quarterly blog that provides an update on the various facets of our diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility journey. So if you want to learn more, you can absolutely find more there. Since we're getting tight on time, 2 quick plugs. One, I don't want to just talk about it. I want to be about it. Find me on Twitter at James LaDuca. I changed my name to it that. If you ever see a job at Twitter and you want it, DM me and let me know the job. let me know that you've applied for it, and I will connect you to the talent acquisition manager who's responsible for filling that role.
James, I love that, and I'll extend the absolute same offer. And I appreciate the question, because there's so much truth in it that, yeah, a lot of us don't have the same fancy college backgrounds that others do. And what I'll tell you is at AT&T, most jobs do not require a college degree. So it's helpful, but not all of them, right? And to James's point, you hire the best person. And so, yes, I think sometimes it might take some help to get in front of an interviewer, and that's where, be bold and reach out. And I have bold young people who are reaching out saying, hey, I saw you here, I see you work here, can you help? Absolutely. The answer is absolutely. Right, and sometimes, there's some helpful guidance that comes along the way to help them be a little bit more competitively positioned. But I think as we encourage people to look at themselves and what they offer as, hey, because of this, and this, and my diversity of perspective, I am uniquely qualified to work at your company, that is a position of power. I think we need to encourage people to take that. But I think that's just part of how we're leveling the playing field. In addition to things James called out, those are really solid best practices, right? We're audited our hiring process, including we all have a tendency to hire people who look like us, who sound like us. It's just a bias, it's an unconscious bias so many of us have. So we do a lot of panel interviewing around here. Right, so you bring in different perspectives in the form of a panel to interview your candidates. It holds you accountable as a hiring manager and uncover some of those unconscious biases to get to the point where you're hiring the best possible candidate and you're building diverse teams that win. So we have to challenge ourselves in that way and be honest that unconscious bias, we all have them. And we have to actively work to acknowledge and overcome them.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. LaShaun, I'm going to pass the baton to you. I know we just have a minute left, but I know you wanted to close out with an invitation to this group. So everyone, LaShaun, Global Head of DE&I Partnership Development Strategy at Pyramid.
Thank you so much, Viviana. And all I can say is just, wow, what an amazing discussion today, and insights have been shared from James and also Lynette. So thank you all so much for joining us today. So again, my name is LaShaun Solomon. I'm the head of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Partnership Development and Strategy for Pyramid Consulting. And my job is overseeing our company's intentionally inclusive efforts around diversity recruiting, employee and contingent staffing engagement, and also community impact across our entire company portfolio. And since starting at Pyramid earlier this year in January, advancing our intentionally inclusive community with the launch of our employee resource groups has been my first priority. As Namita mentioned, we have a total of 7 that have been launched to support and celebrate and elevate the diversity of our workforce, not only at the corporate level, but also our consultants deployed at our customer sites. And we are going to keep the conversation going during Hispanic Heritage Month. And so we have an open invitation to all of you to also join us on September 29th for an additional event celebrating unity. And so I will be dropping the RSVP link in the chat, in addition to inviting you to follow us on LinkedIn to keep up to date on all the activity that is happening on Belong In. And same offer as James made and Lynette made earlier. If you see a job at Pyramid that you are interested in, feel free to reach out to me. You can reach out to Namita. You can reach out to Crystal. I'm volunteering her as well. We are all very active on LinkedIn and we want to connect with you. Again, we are committed to being intentionally inclusive and bringing everyone to the table and providing those resources and opportunity for everyone to succeed. And I'm just going to drop these links in the chat and you should now have them. And so all I have is hasta luego and adios.
Thank you. Thank you so much, LaShaun, Crystal, and Namita from the Pyramid team. Appreciate you bringing HITEC this amazing conversation. Lynette and James, thank you so much for sharing your insight and wisdom with our community. This has been such an amazing conversation. And I can't wait to share it with the rest of the HITEC community. This has been fantastic. And I appreciate you also opening up your doors, virtual doors, if you will, to have the community to be able to reach back out to you directly. That is super important. That is the best way that we build community and these opportunities to advance. So thank you all so much for joining us today, and can't wait to see you all at the next HITEC Live. So thank you all. Take care, everybody. Appreciate it.